YouTube. Welcome to another episode by the Happy Woodworker. Today we're going to talk about setting up your lathe. Maybe you're new to wood turning or woodworking. This is part of my video series for new woodworkers. Maybe you are a teenager or a young adult or an old adult who has never done this type of thing before, and you want to know, how do I set up my lathe to turn? Maybe it's a new purchase. So we're going to start with your lathe. It comes with a live center, which is this one. Single point in the middle. Goes into your tailstock. And a spur drive, which goes into your headstock. So how do we start, and what do we do first? Well, the first thing you have to do is find the middle of the board that you're turning. We want to have this as balanced and as even as possible. So we're going to start with by finding the middle. Now, I've got my little mini ruler here. I use this for just about everything. I'm going to find a corner. I'm going to find a corner or as close to it as possible. And I'm going to make a line. And then I'm going to flip this. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to find my corner as near the middle as possible. I'm also going to make a line. So that ought to be somewhat close to dead center. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. As you can see, I'm using just an old piece of stock here. I've had this laying around the shop for ages. Probably 10 years or better. This is your typical 2x2, which means it's actually like 1.5 and 1.5, I think. Let's measure that. Yep, 1.5 inches. I'm just using regular old building grade lumber here. This is not finished lumber or anything. You'd be surprised what you can use finished grade lumber for, or building grade lumber. So there's my middle. I've measured and marked that. I'll step back, make sure the camera can see this. So I've got an X in the middle on that side, and I've got an X in the middle on that side. So that tells me that's my starting point. This is where I'm going to start at. Next up, we're going to put our live center. Again, this is the one with the bearing. This end turns. It goes into my tailstock. I'm just going to insert that into there, and that's good to go. Next up, I've got to take my spur drive. And this has little teeth in it. As it turns the board. I've got to make sure that those teeth get into the wood. So I'm going to find the point right into the center. And I use a rubber mallet and tap that into place. So we're going to do that. Find that. Find that, and I'm just going to tap that down until that spur drive is driven right into the board. I'm not even holding it. I'm actually going to give it another hit or two because I've got a couple teeth that are not actually gripping in there yet. I want to have a nice good grip with that. And I'm using a rubber mallet to do that because honestly I don't want to hit this with a metal hammer and risk denting it. This is smaller on the end. I probably could, but why damage your tools, right? So now that that's in there, we can insert that. We bring this down and line it up. I'm probably going to get right in the way of the camera here. I've got to get close enough to see what I'm doing. I'm going to tighten my tailstock down. As I figure out what way I want that to go, there we go. Tailstock is nice and tight. I'm going to drive that live center by turning this end. I don't know if you can see the end or not. Yeah, you can. Okay. I'm going to drive that in a little bit and compress it. Not massive amounts, but enough. And then I'm going to lock that down. Alright, my board is on there, ready to go. That is as simple as it is to set up your lathe to turn. You have your spur drive, you pound that in, set up your live center. They're both on the center point. Tighten down your tailstock, extend your spur drive into it a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to be a gorilla with your tools. So the next thing you're going to do is prepare to turn this. For that, we're going to set our tool rest. Because I've already got this loose, I'm going to scoot this up and I'm going to start turning this. I want to be as close as possible to my project without touching it. I'll zoom in for you here. So we're just going to turn this. I'm going to set that as close as I can get it. I got maybe a couple millimeter gap. I want to make sure all four corners clear that tool rest, just in case one of my measurements was a little bit off center. I like to start from this side. So I'm going to move my tool rest over here and do this again. I felt just a little bit right there. There we go. I can lock down my tool rest, and I also like to take a rubber mallet to my tool rest here and just give a couple light, gentle taps. Just so I know it's tight, it's not going anywhere. So let's talk about lathe safety. There are always, that should be the first question on your mind when you're working, is lathe safety. For example, how is this machine going to hurt me? That's something that you should always ask yourself when using any kind of power equipment, is what can this do to hurt me? Well, this spins, so if my fingers were in the wrong spot, maybe they could get caught. That would not be pretty right there. Your fingers should never be near there. This turns, it could catch my long sleeves. I'll have to change my long sleeves before we continue. What else on this moves? This end over here moves. Probably not going to catch me, but it does move. Today we're using the Harbor Freight mini lathe. Every lathe is going to be unique in its design, but I can tell you from experience using this, this is open-ended under here. If you see where I'm sticking my hands, the belt drives and the pulleys and everything are under here. If I were to take a tool, for instance, stick it under here, I could catch that into the pulleys. So if you've got a Harbor Freight lathe, that's something to be aware of. Watch where you're putting your tools and your things that you're sitting down here. You know, maybe I've got my little measuring stick or something. I wouldn't want to stick that in there and get that caught in those belts and those pulleys. I wouldn't want to get my fingers stuck down in there either. Not that your fingers should ever be near there. What else could happen? Well, after I've got the machine going, little chips and things could fly off of this. Very important to have a pair of safety glasses. I have regular glasses that I wear because I'm blind as a bat, but you want to have a good pair of safety glasses too. My particular pair has edge guards around the side. And they're large enough that they can fit over top of my regular glasses. That protects my eyes. After all, why would you risk an injury when it's just as easy to put on a pair of safety glasses or safety equipment? Those of you out there who are doing bowl turning or doing something larger at extremely high speeds, you may want a full face shield. Typically the only thing I do is spindle work, and I don't have to worry about a face shield all that much. So there we go, we're set up. We've talked about some of our safety items. We have our tool wrist set and locked where we want it. Our tool height, as it so happens, this does adjust up and down to get the height right. I want to be just below center, and I'm almost always turning the same thing, so my tool rest is already where I wanted it. So I am going to get rid of the long sleeves, and I will do a video on turning square stock to round stock, just getting started. This is going to be very similar to another video that I did the other day, but again, this is part of my series for new woodworkers or new wood turners. And when we come back, we'll do that video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy my episodes. Please subscribe. And thank you for watching The Happy Woodworker.